Good morning and welcome back to Gaming with ADHD, where today we are going to start another midweek deep dive, this time taking a look at the the Alternity Game Master Guide. So, if you are new here, the last 3 weeks we were going through the Alternity Player's Handbook. We did a collaboration with Legion of Myth, where because they were covering it at the same time, they have actually finished their series, and so they are. We're not doing official collaborations anymore, but I still recommend that you go and check out their material. There is a link down in the description, and I highly recommend that you go check that out. So, what we are doing today is we're going to start looking at the fast play rules as presented in the Game Master's Guide. It also does have an adventure. No, we won't read through the adventure because of spoilers. But we are also going to look at hero creation. Now, in this case, hero creation is more about alternatives to hero creation, different ways, like if you want to randomly roll stats, things like that. So those are the kind of things that we'll be reading about today. Now, of course, before we get started, I absolutely recommend that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Number one, it helps out the channel. But number two, you'll be able to see when the new streams go live. We do these Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during the week. On Mondays, I usually do something miniature related. And on Friday, I try to paint my miniatures. Good morning, Malachi. Happy to have you here, sir. So, last thing I will announce before we get started. Tune back in tonight, where I will actually be joined by the ever infamous Peanut Gallery, also known as my wife or Kim, however you want to call her. And we will be going over, or we will be getting started on the Batman Gotham City Chronicles role-playing game from Monolith. So we're doing that one because I have not received the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles PDFs, so I can't start that. So that'll probably be the next one. But I've been wanting to get back to doing those Tuesday night streams, so here we are. So, I guess with all of that out of the way, we have, you have Malachi. So it's a start. Hopefully we'll get some new viewers later on. I do apologize for being late. I try to start these about 8:30 my time, but we had an internet outage and sick grandson. Malachi wants to know G.I. Joe when? Probably this year. I haven't thought that far ahead, but this year probably, because I don't want to make, I don't want to call it a mistake, but I think even Max agreed that, like, when he did Mutant Year Zero or like all the Palladium books, and you're covering essentially this because you want to cover everything to make sure that there's the whole series for that particular game. Um, for the regular audience, you're kind of dumping a whole lot of the same stuff repeatedly. So, since Kim and I did My Little Pony not that long ago, I didn't want to jump too quickly into another Essence 20 system. So this year, possibly, I know you volunteered, and we can probably make that happen, but bear with me because I haven't committed to anything yet. So, all right. With that said, let's get started. If I can figure out what I'm doing. There we go. All right. This is the Alternity Game Master's Guide. One thing that I actually really, really like about the Game Master's Guide, I wonder if I can do this. The player's handbook and the Game Master's Guide, if you notice, well, actually, nope, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Not with the way that I'm sharing screens. Okay. So answers that question. If you notice, like this edge matches up with this edge. So it's essentially one giant piece of art. I really like that. That's just a fun little Easter egg, not something that you expect, but it's nice. And it's a cool piece of art. You have these weird looking aliens that technically don't even exist in the game that I'm aware of. Maybe he's just a mutant. And then you have this space soldier guy thing. Anyways, I like the art. So art's something that will always like, I'm not an artist, but it will always hit me as far as like you know just kind of inspiring as far as a game is concerned, things like that. So I always like that. All right. So we're not going to read all of the introduction, just a few select parts. I'm not going to talk about what is role playing, blah, 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 all that kind of nonsense, but just the things that are more specific to Alternity and kind of them presenting their vision of what the game is supposed to be. All right. What's your vision of the future? Do you see an age of exploration and discovery as humanity spans the void between stars? An era of colonization and hope, with populated worlds shining like 1,000 jewels in the immensity of space and time? Or do you harbor darker expectations for the future? Do you fear the specter of unending war? Do you see years of unspeakable horror and madness ahead? Ages of chaos and decay beneath the silent, uncaring stars? Chances are, the truth lies somewhere between our brightest hopes and our most abysmal fears. We won't know what the future holds until we experience it in person. But it's the nature of the human mind to speculate, to wonder, to make up stories and spin possibilities about what might come to pass in the years ahead. That's where you come in. You're about to find out what goes into creating exciting science fiction role playing adventures about tomorrow and that you and your friends can experience today. What's your vision of the future? Think about it. So which future do you want to play? All right, I like that. I like that little that little tagline, little slogan about the game. Yeah, especially because they are, you know, um, presenting it as far as like, it can be modern, it can be far future, things like that. All right. Oh, wrong button. All right. What is the Alternity game? The Alternity's Player's Handbook and Game Master's Guide combine to form a role-playing game system for simulating modern to far future adventures. The Alternity rules will show you how you and your friends can create science fiction role-playing stories together. Think of any science fiction movie, television show, comic book, novel, or short story you've ever read. With the Alternity rules, you can rewrite or revisit these amazing tales using heroes, villains, aliens, plots, and stories of your own invention. Your imagination is the only limit. As you play the Alternity game, you and your friends will shape this vision. Explore it, expand it, and create your own unique worlds of wonder and adventure. Imagine a future in which humanity can travel from star to star, or one in which humans aren't alone in the universe. Imagine a world in which a few super secret agents fight against an unseen menace that masquerades as people of great power and high station. Or think of a world where the Cold War was fought with bombs and missiles instead of rhetoric and posturing, a world ravaged by nuclear war. How would the heroes of this kind of future try to put things back together again? Science fiction is an amazingly broad field, and the Alternity game lets you explore your own vision of the future as you wish. If you think that you are ready to plunge into the imaginative futures, then you'll find that the Alternity game is the perfect vehicle for your journey. Bring your own vision, your own style, your own experience to the table, and get ready for the time of your life. All right, I'm going to say it again because I think they did this in the player's handbook as well. But this right here already makes me like this better than Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons, you open it up and page 1, they're like, hey, we're going to make a character. They don't tell you why. They don't give you any inspiration. They don't tell you what you're supposed to be, why you're supposed to be that. It doesn't, try to influence you one way or the other. Just says, all right, let's go make a character. And I always bounced off of D&D because of it. It didn't give me any kind of inspiration. Even this is a lot of generic. It's but it's at least trying to spark your inspiration about what you should be doing, why you are making a character, what it's supposed to look like. So, I love when they say those kinds of things. Let's see. All right. What is role playing? Obviously, like I said, we're going to skip that. Who can play? I like this. Anyone who wants to can play the Alternity game, though the recommended starting age is 10. One player must be the game master. In addition to the game master, you need at least one other player or as many as 10. But you'll find that game sessions work best with groups of 4 to 6 other players. I love that. That's all they talk about. You need people. Doesn't matter the people. Any kind of people. But it's people that want to play the game. I appreciate that they said that. All right. So, okay, I don't need to read. All right. How to use this book. The Alternity Game Master Guide is designed specifically for game masters, providing rules and advice on running game sessions and creating ongoing Alternity campaigns. You need the Alternity Player's Handbook in order to have the complete rules package. Okay. All right. So chapter 1 is the fast play rules. We're going to look at that here in just a second. Chapter 2 is hero creation. Chapter 3, game masters in action. Might do a couple of, it says right here, longest chapter in the book. So maybe we'll end up doing a couple of days on that one. Chapter 4, skills. Chapter 5, perks and flaws. So it's expanding upon the player's handbook. Chapter 6, supporting cast. So NPCs, that kind of stuff. Chapter 7, attributes. Goes into the detail about the relationships that can exist between heroes and other characters in a campaign setting. Okay, interesting. Chapter 8, achievements. Chapter 9, running the game. Chapter 10, vehicles. So expanding on the player handbook. And chapter 11, spaceships. Again, complete set of rules for designing different spacecraft. Chapter 12, alien artifacts. So if you use the artifact perk and flaw from the player's handbook, that's where you can design those. Chapter 13, campaign design. Chapter 14, campaign architecture. Chapter 15, adventure design. Chapter 16, optional rules. Is partly an extension of chapters 13, 14, and 15. It also goes on to introduce an entirely new set of optional rules, FX, short for special effects. Essentially, it's superpowers, which I actually have the supplement for that. Beyond Science is the FX book. And then creatures and aliens. And then they also give rules for converting from advanced Dungeons and Dragons into Alternity, but we're not going to do that. All right. Tables and sidebars. Okay, this is actually an interesting point. So a few of the tables in this book appear in the player's handbook. So if they have a P on it, it's from the player's handbook. If it's from the G, they have a it's from the Game Master's Guide. Okay. Final words. A bit of advice. For the game to work, players and game masters need to remember one thing. What the game master says goes. Sometimes you're going to have to interpret a rule or situation that just isn't covered in the books. That's when you have to make a decision. Try to be fair and consistent, but the goal is to get on with the game quickly. Explain your decision, don't argue, and keep the action going. Later, you can discuss the ruling and possibly talk about making minor modifications if you think it's warranted. But in the middle of the game, rule in favor of fast, exciting, and story, story, story. Remember, a role playing game isn't about using every rule exactly as it's written, it's about having fun. Use what you like in the rules, make up new ones if you want, but above all, apply the rules of common sense and story to your game. If something makes sense to you, then just declare that from now on, that's the way it works in your game. And if something ought to happen for the story or adventure to advance, don't let the rules dictate against your judgment. Take what's presented here, adapt it, make it work for your group and your playing style, and just have fun. That's what role playing is all about. So I'm slightly mixed on that. After hanging out with Max is very much a you should try to play the rules as written, at least at first, and I agree with that. But I do absolutely agree with this point. When you're playing the game, don't be afraid to just make a ruling and get on with it. Too many times people are willing to get bogged down and just just deal, or they're willing to get bogged down and just let the arguing about the rules interfere with getting the game on. Friend of the channel, Seraphis, uh, recently left a game that he was in because they couldn't ever just settle a rule and move on. They'd be in a combat and they'd go 1.5 rounds. And then it's like, okay, we'll come back in 2 weeks. And then they do another 1.5 rounds. And it's just like nothing, like he was in the game for 2 years and nothing happened. So yeah, don't be afraid to just, make a ruling, get on with it, and play the game. You can argue to your heart's content after the session is over. Don't need to do it during the game. All right, there's my pontificating. All right, Chapter 1, Fast Play Rules. This chapter is a companion to Chapter 1, Fast Play Rules in the Player's Handbook. The information here is directed to the Game Master and particularly to people who are trying a role-playing game for the first time. However, even if you have experience in running role-playing games, it's a good idea to read this chapter to give yourself a clear idea of how the Alternity game works and how it differs from other role-playing game rules you may be familiar with. All right, so you want to be the Game Master. This chapter of the Game Master Guide provides an overview of the Game Master's role in an Alternity game. It contains a short adventure that you can use to introduce your players to the game and familiarize yourself with moderating a role-playing session. What does a Game Master do? Basically, he presents adventures for the players to run their heroes through and acts as the moderator of the rules. In this chapter, you'll find an introduction to the Alternity game that can get you off to a good start for your first game session. The role of the Game Master. As the Game Master, you have a number of jobs to handle during and between game sessions. Unlike other types of games that have strict rules and deal with limited situations, a role-playing game, such as the Alternity game, is as wide open as the players' imaginations. For this reason, the presence of a game moderator to act as referee, story designer, and narrator is essential. The players interact with each other in the game environment through the actions of their characters, the heroes. The Game Master describes each scene, directs the action, and plays the roles of the supporting cast members, villains. I love scrolling all the way up. Villains, allies, and extras who inhabit the campaign world. However, the Game Master isn't competing against the players. When the Game Master and the players get together to tell a fun and exciting group story, everybody wins. That's the power and appeal of role-playing. Key concepts. Let's take a look at some of the key concepts behind moderating the Alternity game. Game Master, the participant in the game who acts as the moderator, narrating adventures and controlling characters who are involved in the story but aren't under the direct control of the players. Hero, an imaginary character controlled by a player. Supporting cast, the other characters who appear in every story, friends, enemies, and incidental characters whom the heroes interact with. Members of the supporting cast are controlled by the Game Master. Setting, the imaginary context and environment within which the heroes interact with situations. Adventure, a scenario in which the heroes interact to create a group story. As game master, you present an opening situation or scene. The rest of the adventure unfolds through the actions of the heroes and the moderation of the game master. Campaign, a continuing series of adventures that takes place in a single setting and focuses on the same group of heroes. Campaign can be finite, ending after as many adventures as necessary to tell the complete story, or it can be an ongoing tale, progressing like a television or comic book series. Group story. While a regular story, such as found in a movie or a book, features a set beginning, middle, and ending, a group story is more dynamic. The game master has an outline that provides a series of encounters and events, and a few possible ways the adventure could end. The dynamic comes from the group, the players and game master, who determine the course of the story and its outcome through the interaction of their imaginary characters. In a group story, no one, not even the game master, knows exactly how it all will end. Game session. One distinct period of gameplay, a time when you gather your friends to play the Alternity game. Some adventures can be completed in a single session, others might require several sessions to reach a conclusion. All right. So, all that is pretty common. Why did I read all of that? To be honest with you, mostly it's to make sure, because we're reading through at least the majority of the book. I want to make sure that if any of those terms come up, we've already defined them. So, how the game approaches them, the definitions that the writers are working under, I want to make sure that we have that all in place. All right. Presenting an adventure. A role-playing game's action takes place in an adventure. Within its structure, the participants create the group's story. The game master's role in the adventure centers around presenting and narrating the story, portraying supporting cast members, and moving the story along at a satisfying pace. Whether you use published adventures or you create your own epics, the game master's role remains the same. Narration. The heroes can't perform heroic actions or daring deeds in a vacuum. They need to be involved in a story during which they act, react, and create a fulfilling tale. A story consists of a beginning, a middle, and an end, and each story should be filled with conflicts and goals. In other words, obstacles for the heroes to overcome and objectives for them to achieve. It's up to the game master to have the basics of a story ready when the game session gets underway. Remember, though, that the story will be completed by the group through the actions of the heroes and their interaction with your supporting cast. The heroes play an important part in determining how a story takes shape, and you should make sure their decisions play a part in the process. You must develop a basic plot or use a plot from a published product, provide motivations and objectives for the heroes, and have an exciting idea for the ending. What's up, Cody? How you doing, buddy? I know it's one of your favorites. That's part of the inspiration for reading it. Let's see. Let me start over. You must develop a basic plot, provide motivations and objectives for the heroes, and have an exciting idea for the ending. A plot requires enough background material so that the story feels like it fits the campaign setting. Other elements make a good basic plot include a major antagonist or the villain, the antagonist's nefarious scheme, and motivations to make the heroes want to get involved. These elements come together in the adventure's opening scene called the trigger. The Cauldron Station adventure provides an example of how these elements work together. Like I said, we're probably going to skip reading the adventure unless you all really want me to read it and spoil it if you haven't played it before. Yes, Cody, I realize you probably played it before. Actually, one thing that was kind of interesting. So yesterday I was most of my day was spent sitting on the couch with the grandson who was not feeling well, in various states of him napping. And I turned on Thundercats. And it was actually kind of interesting because like we burned through like 3 to 4 hours worth of Thundercats, and I kind of came to the realization that either they are like well, not either, but basically everything kind of felt like a simple Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Weird creatures that came out of nowhere, different, uh like the stories were put together pretty well. Um I th- it's definitely something where the points that it's making about having these triggers, the things that you need to make sure that you as a game master bring to the table. I'm starting to kind of see that a little bit more. you know who knows, maybe one day I might even actually run a game. All right, supporting cast. Each of the players control one hero at any given time. The Game Master controls all the other characters in the adventure. The most important supporting cast member is the major antagonist. A good villain sets the mood of a story and can even make the heroes more memorable. No one recalls who rounded up the spaceport thugs, but everyone remembers the heroes who took down Captain Blackstar, the scourge of the frontier. All right, Cody. So if you don't want me to spoil it, I won't read it. If you want me to, maybe we'll read through a little bit of it. All right, supporting cast members include the major villain, his or her associates, and hired hands, the authority figures who command or employ the heroes, the informants, witnesses, and shop owners the heroes interact with, and the valued friends, hirelings, and allies ready to help the heroes at a moment's notice. The Game Master needs to be ready to run these characters as they are called upon, or to improvise as the need arises. It's important for the Game Master to give each supporting cast member, especially major opponents and allies, much the same consideration players give their heroes when they create them. Some supporting cast members should be fully developed with a complete set of skills and vital game statistics. Other characters, such as minor opponents, experts, and bystanders, need only the skill scores and statistics that might come into play during a scene. For example, give a common thug a combat skill or two, durability ratings, and a weapon. Give an expert just the skill scores needed to use his expertise on the hero's behalf. The best part about controlling the supporting cast is that you get to create all kinds of personalities during the course of play. Ham it up, play it straight, or go for the dramatic, depending on the mood of the adventure and the personality of the character in question. If you want, use a unique voice for each character by doing accents, a French combat spec, a Russian diplomat, employing different styles of speech, a formal sounding free agent, a tech op who uses lots of slang expressions, or giving characters signature phrases, such as an informant who always spouts, "Whatever you say, boss, whatever you say." Remember, you're not competing against the players. If anything, the heroes should get a break now and then just because they're the heroes. So be impartial. Don't favor the supporting cast over the heroes. That just increases the all-important fun factor for everyone involved. So, all right. One thing I will complain about, like supporting cast. I why do games always have to change the terms? I mean, I get things like okay, dungeon master. Okay, that's trademarked, but supporting cast, it's NPCs. It's always NPCs. It's always been NPCs. It was NPCs for 20 years before they wrote this book. I don't know why they had to rewrite that. Um, obviously, as far as like doing voices or or accents, things like that, it's not always necessary. I think they're just trying to say, hey, these are things you can do. Um, you know, but in my time, learning about this, yeah, you don't have to do it. Um, some people do it really well. Some people do not do it very well. But regardless, I think the point is just have some fun with it. All right, pacing. Another aspect of presenting an adventure is the pacing of the story. This is where I have always struggled when I have tried to run stuff before. Is that pacing? Um, the story shouldn't artificially push the heroes to meet some schedule. Instead, watch how the scenes play out. When a scene starts to drag and the fun factor begins to flag, that's when you step in to give the scene a boost. How? By using the resources at your disposal. Maybe have a supporting character show up with some tip that gives the heroes a nudge in the right direction. If your players don't know what to do next and the story is in danger of stalling, it's up to you to give it new life. Don't create an adventure outline that's so complete the heroes can't make any decisions without violating your plot. Start the adventure with action and have lots of other action ideas ready to insert into the flow as the game session progresses. Use combat, challenges, encounters, conflict, tension, humor, and mystery to keep an adventure moving toward its dramatic conclusion. The basic rule for pacing is that as long as the players are having fun, stay in this current scene. When the action bogs down, then the game master must help the pacing by getting things moving again. Okay, I really like that idea, or not that idea, but the I have not heard that before. The basic rule for pacing. You know, if everybody's having fun, even if they're shopping in town, you know, as long as they're having fun, as long as there's progress being made, you know, like if the GM is focusing on one particular player and everybody else is just sitting there bored, okay, that's doing it wrong. But if he's able to keep things going and, obviously there has to be a point where he cuts it off. But if people are having fun with it and he's still able to keep, going around the table and people are giving him things to work with, yeah, stick in the current scene. Have some fun with it. Let the players enjoy it because if you cut it off, if you end that scene, you then have to build up that fun again. So let the scene itself tell you when to cut it off. And then, it's like, all right, you've bought everything that you need to do. It's getting dark out. The shops are starting to close. Hey, great. Okay, cool. We're going to go to the tavern. We're going to go to our rooms. We're going to go to sleep. Okay, great. We then get to start the next scene, next day. What's going on? Cool. I like that. That's actually really helpful. Yeah, because also one thing I will point out for me, like it's it's filling in those bits in between. I can say, "Oh, you're starting here." But then my brain automatically wants to jump to this is where you're supposed to be, so let's go there. And so that's where I struggle is allowing those middle scenes to flesh out and making the players work for the information essentially. So, I got a lot to learn. All right. Moderating the rules. Chapter 1 of the player's handbook gives you all the basic facts about how the Alternity game works. It's all you need to introduce your players to the game system and run the adventure in this section. In play, it's up to the game master to moderate the game so that everyone has fun, plays fair, and is challenged. Of all of these, the emphasis is always on fun. If a rule gets in the way of everyone's enjoyment, change it. But change it consistently and after consideration. Don't just change a rule for the sake of change. Final decisions are always left to the game master. Can the heroes perform a particular action? Can they even try it? That's up to you. Make your decision based on the need to keep the story moving. Your interpretation of the rules and whether or not the action fits the story and increases everyone's enjoyment of the game. Be fair and impartial in your treatment of the heroes and supporting characters. Challenge the players and their heroes. The players want to see their heroes tested, to experience the thrill of competing against the odds and coming out on top. Heroes do this sort of thing all the time. Just make sure the players have decisions to make and options to choose from as the adventure unfolds. If someone disagrees with a decision, call a timeout and discuss it with the group. You still get to make a final call, but you can reduce the possibility of hard feelings if you moderate the game fairly. The goal is to tell a good group story and have fun, not to abuse the heroes. Sometimes the dice are just going to fall the wrong way. That's okay, but you might want to give the players a break now and then. After all, it's no fun for a player to lose a hero in a stupid and random way. Be lenient when determining the difficulty of a particular action, or change the result before revealing the outcome to the players. This sort of manipulation is the game master's prerogative, but use it sparingly and always in the interest of keeping the story moving and the fun factor high. All right. So considering the circles that I run around in, this is interesting because like I don't necessarily disagree. Um but I like how they put in there where it's like, okay, if you need to change the result, you know, it's your prerogative to do so, but use it sparingly. You know, like I can understand. It's like, hey, we just got started and oh, your ship blows up and everybody's dead. Make new characters. Nobody's going to want to do that. So, yeah, occasionally I think it's okay to pull a punch. You know, but I like that. They straight up say use it sparingly and always in the interest of keeping the story moving and the fun factor high. Okay, maybe I don't necessarily agree with the fun factor part because that's way too nebulous. But, you know, if you blow up all of the heroes without, you know, planning for it, you know, then you just killed the game and now you're back to square one. So, yeah, I get that. All right. The setting. The game master determines the setting for his campaign. Depending on the features of a particular setting, such as technology, genre, and scope, certain portions of the rules, high-tech gear, psionics, and aliens, for instance, may or may not be used. For example, a space opera setting usually has faster than light spaceships, energy weapons, and tons of nonstop action. A near-future techno-thriller setting, however, has a gritty, hard-edged feel, more familiar technology, and only deals with the problems of a single world. In the Game Master Guide, the process of creating settings is discussed in more detail. The Cauldron Station adventure in this chapter takes place in a traditional space opera setting, which that was actually something that I really enjoyed looking through the Star Drive book, because of the fact that like they're like, well, why Star Drive? Why is that the first setting? And they're like, because if you think of science fiction, that's what you think of. You don't think of cyberpunk. You don't think of X-Files. You don't think of, you know, all these other things. Typically, if you hear science fiction, you think of spaceships and laser guns and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, um, yeah, there is flexibility, but yes, it's, you know, setting is absolutely important. All right, using the game mechanic. The Alternity game is built around a core mechanic that has nearly universal application. All heroic actions in the game can be resolved by rolling just 2 dice, a control die and a situation die. A control die is always a d20. A situation die can be a d4, d6, d8, d12, or d20, depending on how hard or easy a particular task is. The result of the situation die is added to or subtracted from the result of the control die, as detailed in the fast play rules in the player's handbook. You can use the dice in varying ways, though. Let me start over. You can use the dice in varying ways, though the mechanic is always the same. Roll 2 dice, trying to achieve a number that's equal to or less than a character's appropriate score. If the task is associated with a skill, then the skill score is used. If it's a feat, then the associated ability score is used. In all uses of dice during a game session, except when rolling for damage, low results are better than high ones. Use the mechanic to determine the success of an attack using an appropriate combat skill. To overcome a challenge, using a physical or mental skill, or to determine the outcome of an encounter using a personality skill in conjunction with good role playing. The most important rule: not every action requires a dice roll. Repeat this sentence and apply it often. When the heroes attempt normal, everyday tasks, they should accomplish them without consulting the dice. In heroic situations, when the outcome is in doubt and the result could mean life or death, then have the players roll dice. Situation dice steps. The best tool you have as the game master is your ability to set the odds of any given task. You can do this by adding bonuses or penalties to given situations and counting in the appropriate direction on the situation die steps scale. Or if you're more inclined toward quick resolution, simply eyeball it. Select the modifier that matches how difficult or easy you want the task to be. So, here's the chart for eyeballing the table. I'll be honest. I actually like the step system that they've got here. You know, either you can, take all sorts of different situations and apply the steps accordingly, and then figure out what your situation die is, or you can just eyeball it. I actually really like the fact that they gave you the eyeball rules. Extremely easy. -3 steps from wherever you're at. Okay, cool. Minus D8. It anyways, I like the dice mechanic. I was I'm I'm trying to figure out ways to use it other places. Because there is something I am working on in the back of my head, but that's a separate thing. And I was considering something like this because I like it. It's relatively simple, but I think another system that's similar might be better. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. All right. Putting it into practice. What do you actually do with this information? That depends. Here are examples of both methods in action. Use either method or a combination of the two as you see fit. The step-by-step method. Michelle's hero, Jade, wants to take a shot at the villainous bounty hunter. Jade has the pistol skill, so she has a base situation die of plus D0. The bounty hunter is 25 meters away from Jade, which is medium range, +1 step penalty. For her weapon, and has light cover, +1 step penalty. In addition, because Jade is standing atop a moving sky car, you declare that the situation has a good level of difficulty, +2 steps. By counting out the steps on the situation die step scale, the Game Master determines that Jade has a final situation die of plus D12. Michelle rolls a D20 plus D12, hoping to achieve a total that's equal to or less than Jade's pistol score. If she succeeds, then Jade hits her target, scoring either an ordinary, good, or amazing success. Eyeballing it. Dave's hero, Jack Everstar, needs to slip past the customs official. Since Everstar doesn't have the sneak specialty skill, his base situation die is plus D4. You decide that the official is particularly vigilant today. This makes the situation hard, causing Everstar to take a +2 step penalty. Dave rolls a D20 plus D8, hoping for a result equal to or less than Everstar's stealth skill score. All right, I wish they would have shown one that gave some positive, some bonuses instead of just penalties. Because say Dave is managed to get a guard's uniform, or manages to find the Wookiee that's walking down the hall and step behind him so that the official doesn't necessarily notice him. Again, I realize that's coming under the step-by-step method, but all they did is just threw penalties in there, and it's in here they could have said, "Oh, Jade has a laser scope." Okay, cool. That gives her a -2 bonus. Anyways, all right. That's my rant. All right, action rounds. Although actions in a phase are considered to occur simultaneously, you don't want everyone rolling dice at the same time. Instead, all characters who are entitled to an action in the same phase should act in the order of their action check scores. Highest score first. The results of their actions, such as damage, are applied at the end of the phase, thus simulating simultaneous activity. For example, Jade, Everstar, and the Bounty Hunter Crete each achieve a good action check result. Their action check scores are 13, 10, and 15, respectively. For ease of play, Crete acts first in the good phase, followed by Jade, then Everstar. The result of each character's action are applied after everyone has acted, taking effect in the ordinary phase. If the Well then, grandson is making his opinion known. Characters have actions remaining. They go in the same order in the ordinary phase. Damage. In the fast play rule system, damage comes in 3 types: stun, wound, and mortal. If a character is hit by an attack or some other damage causing condition, the degree of success achieved by that attack determines the type and amount of damage suffered by a character. Each of the character templates at the end of chapter 1 of the player's handbook lists some examples of weapons and armor and includes their important statistics. All right. Secondary damage. Serious lasting injuries, mortal damage, and wound damage cause secondary damage to the character who is injured. For every 2 points of wound damage inflicted on a character, that character also suffers 1 point of stun damage. For every 2 points of mortal damage a character receives, that character also suffers 1 point of wound damage and 1 point of stun damage. Skipping over these examples because we read all of that last time in the player's handbook. Armor. Characters can wear armor to protect them from the dangers of battle. Armor can reduce the primary damage a hero suffers, but armor has no effect on secondary damage. So, if you stop mortal wounds, you're still going to take regular wounds and stun damage. All right. Okay, that's still the example. All right, recovery. After a character suffers damage, he or she can get back to full health in a number of different ways. Wound damage, but not mortal damage, can heal naturally at a rate of 2 wound points per week of rest and recuperation. The knowledge first aid specialty skill can heal stun damage on unconscious patients, negating 2, 3, or 4 points of stun damage depending on the degree of success achieved on the skill check. First aid can also be used to revive a character who was knocked out due to stun damage, restoring 1, 2, or 3 stun points depending on the degree of success. The skill can be used to heal wound damage. Any success restores 1 wound point. The medical science treatment specialty skill can be used to heal stun damage on conscious patients as per first aid above. Medical science treatment can also be used to revive a character who is knocked out due to stun damage, restoring 2, 3, or 4 stun points depending on the degree of success. The skill can be used to heal wound damage. Any success restores 2 wound points. The medical science surgery specialty skill can be used to heal wound damage and mortal damage. A success restores 1 point of mortal and 2 points of wound damage. This skill can be used on a specific patient once every hour. If a critical failure occurs, the patient suffers 1 additional point of mortal damage. Any remaining stun damage disappears at the end of a scene. All right, there we go. So, yes, it went over a lot of the basics, a lot of the things that we've already gone over in the player's handbook. But I like how, again, they were focusing on the game master, and it's like, hey, these are the important things that you need to know, especially for these fast play rules. They want to just get you. I actually kind of like how the book, yes, I realize it eats up some of the page count, but I actually like how they put fast play rules in and said, cool, here's enough for you and your players to get in and get going. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read this and go. Obviously, running a pre-printed adventure is, that's going to take a little bit of work as well, but that's not a problem. Let's see here. All right, you know what? In the interest of time, because I do have to go to sleep, I am going to skip the adventure. If you guys want to see it, drop it in the comments. Maybe we can tack on reading through the adventure in a separate episode, like just kind of do like a special episode on its own. That way, if you don't want the spoilers, you don't have to, it's not like, bam, here, we're right in the middle of the video, spoilers. So put it in the comments if you want me to read through the adventure. Cody probably wants me to run the adventure, but that's a whole separate story. All right. Chapter 2, Hero Creation. Players are one of the best resources you have for thinking up new adventures and great storylines for your campaign. If a player has poured thought, imagination, and personality into a hero, stories suggest themselves to both player and game master. Encourage your players to create living, breathing characters and challenge them to play these characters with intelligence and resourcefulness. The more that a player has invested in his or her hero, the greater interest the player will exhibit in your game. Working with your players as they build heroes requires a steady hand. If you force players to create characters they don't like, they'll walk away dissatisfied. On the other hand, you can't let players create heroes that destroy the balance of your campaign. Finding the balance between these extremes is an art. This chapter contains suggestions, rules, and advice to help you in this task. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Ability scores. So a lot of this will have been covered in the player's handbook. Remember, a lot of this is going to be talking about, here are extra things that you can add. Here are variants for ways that you can do something. So it's not just reprinting character creation. All right. Ability scores. Ability scores play an important role. They form the basis for skill checks and consequently combat power, persuasiveness, stealth, and overall usefulness. Players magnify this trend by selecting skills at which they know their heroes will excel, and by avoiding skills keyed to their hero's lower ability scores. What exactly do a hero's ability scores tell you about that character? In real life and in fiction, no one has a hero sheet. Instead, you judge people by the way they look, the way they act, and the ease or difficulty with which they deal with others. Ability scores engineer your character from a set of game statistics into a three-dimensional hero that you can envision in your mind's eye. Strength. Strength represents the capability for applying physical power. Some heroes with high strength scores are muscle-bound titans. Others are wiry or compact in build, but possess the innate talent for getting the most out of the muscle that they do possess. Strength isn't just a measure of a character's bench press. It's an abstract score that measures intangibles such as power, precision, flexibility, and a hint of physical confidence or determination. This is why skills such as athletics, heavy weapons, and melee weapons are based on the hero's strength score. Strength is the prime ability score of the combat spec profession. All right, dexterity. Dexterity measures agility, reflexes, hand-eye coordination, balance, fleetness of foot, elusiveness, and physical intuition. Heroes with high dexterity scores aren't necessarily acrobats or jugglers. Many heroes excel in only one or two areas. Meanwhile, clumsiness isn't an automatic trait for heroes with a low dexterity. Such heroes or supporting cast members might just have a lousy sense of balance or a knack for net landing badly. Similarly, they might not have a good eye for shooting or for completing detailed work. On the other hand, a hero with good dexterity score tends to be graceful, quick, and agile. Dexterity is a prime ability score of the free agent profession. It's also crucial to any character involved in a gunfight because many of the most useful combat skills use a hero's dexterity score. Even the most muscle-bound combat spec needs a decent dexterity in order to target an enemy with a firearm. Constitution. Constitution measures health, durability, toughness, and general grit. Like dexterity, this physical attribute isn't easy to quantify. Try looking at a hero's constitution score and asking these questions. How often does he get sick? How far could he jog before he'd have to stop and catch his breath? How easily does he shake off injuries? A character with a low score is weak in one of these areas. You may find it hard to tell the difference between strength and constitution. Where does one ability start and the other stop? Constitution refers to resistance to physical ordeals. How much punishment can he take before his body fails him? A hero or villain with a high strength and a low constitution may be out of shape, a heavy smoker, or lacking in the ability to push himself for the best results. The reverse describes a person without great physical gifts who makes an effort to keep himself in shape or manifests surprising resilience in the face of hardship. Constitution is critical to any character, whether a hero or supporting cast member, since it directly governs the amount of damage one can withstand. Stun, wound, fatigue, and mortal ratings depend directly on the Constitution score. Intelligence measures key mental characteristics such as raw reasoning power and breadth and extent of education. An unbiased IQ test, one that didn't assume any educational or cultural background, might measure reasoning power. Education is routinely measured through a variety of examinations. Intelligence is a prime ability score for tech ops. However, it is useful for heroes of any career or type since it governs the number of skills with which they begin play. Will represents mental fortitude, faith, strength of character, willpower, determination, discipline, and intuition. It measures how well a hero reads the character of others, and it demonstrates how attuned a hero is to his surroundings. Will is the primary ability score of these optional Mindwalker profession. Will also serves as the basis for a hero's awareness skill, which allows him to detect threats, read character, and generally spot or avoid ugly surprises in the course of an adventure. If the optional psionic powers described under the Mindwalker profession are used, Will represents the first line of defense against mental influences and attacks. And finally, personality measures charisma, appearance, leadership, and magnetism. Physical beauty is only a small portion of a person's personality score, although looks are important for initial impressions. The way in which a person expresses himself, listens to others, and interacts with society is far more influential. Personality is the primary ability score for diplomat heroes. Personality scores also determine how many last resort points a hero starts play with, and how many last resort points a hero can possess at any given time. All right. Okay, ability score scale. Okay, we're gonna skip over that except to show that it goes from 4 to 14. Um, probability of getting those scores. Um, anyways, um, okay, odds refer to the chance of rolling that exact ability score using the 2d6 plus 2 method. So one of the alternate ones we're going to see in about a page. All right, let's skip the rest of that. Let's jump over to age. As intelligent species mature and age, their physical and mental capabilities change. Older members of these species may slow down physically, but gain wisdom and life experience. If you run a long lived campaign in which the heroes age and change with the passage of time, account for these changes by modifying the character's ability scores. These modifications can't allow characters to exceed species minimums or maximums. So, adolescence, -1 strength, +1 dex, -1 intelligence, -1 will. Young adult, no modifications. Mature, +1 intelligence, +1 personality. Middle aged, -1 dex, +1 intelligence, +1 will. Old, -1 strength, -1 constitution, -1 dex, +1 will, +1 personality. And ancient, -1 strength, -1 constitution, -1 dexterity. Most heroes begin play as young adults. If your play, which is okay. If your players see their characters as unusually young or old, you may allow them to apply the adolescent or mature modifiers to their ability scores. How long do characters live? Generally, as long as you want them to. If you decide to monitor age closely in your game, refer to Table G1, age category by species. The table shows the baseline age breakpoints for heroes and supporting cast members of different progress levels. As technology progresses, the lifespan of each species increases. This simulates the ability of medical technology, nutritional and dietary advances, and environmental integrity that work to slow or even reverse the aging process. Table G1 uses the Earth-based solar calendar to measure years. All right, here's the table. So we have adolescent, young adult, mature, middle-aged, old, and ancient. And then the different progress levels. So essentially telling you what, the different aliens, regard as those particular ages, which even for, the alien species, most of them are about at least the same as far as adolescents and young adults. But all right. Not all species use the Earth standard to measure their age. Thus, a middle-aged Sashayan might offer a different number if asked his age. If you need to determine the maximum lifespan of a hero or supporting cast member, simply check the ancient age category, roll the listed die, and add the result to the number given for the old category. For example, the game master wants to find out natural lifespan of Grildock, a Warren mercenary in his PL7 campaign. He then rolls 3d12, getting a 12, and adds the score to 151 for a total of 163 years. Hold on a second, folks. Man, grandson is not happy today. Luckily, grandma's out there. All right. Few campaigns ever span a length of time that a hero dies of old age. However, a time hopping adventure might bring heroes face to face with younger or older versions of themselves. For that matter, the time travel process itself might age or rejuvenate the heroes. Relativity can be a great excuse for advancing the age of some heroes while the story continues. Finally, advanced medical technology or secret genetic experiments might reverse the aging process, since heroes tend to blunder into situations like this fairly frequently. You shouldn't feel as though you're required to retire one of your player's favorite heroes just because he's become a bit long in the tooth. Anything can happen. All right, ability score generation. Determining the method by which your players generate their heroes' ability scores is an important decision. Following text gives you several methods to choose from. Assigned ability scores. The method described in Chapter 2 in the player's handbook details the preferred route for creating new heroes. This method allows a player to assign 60 points among the various ability scores. You don't even have to be present when the player puts his character together. Just review the hero sheet once the player finishes selecting his profession, career, and skills. The assigned score method has the advantage of leveling the playing field. All heroes are created equal, and every player has a fair chance to individualize ability scores as desired. One downside of the assigned score method is that it lends itself to min-maxing. Min-maxing is the practice of building a hero to gain the most benefits from the rules system while minimizing disadvantages and vulnerabilities. For example, a player may set his tech op hero's constitution score at 6 because he intends to stay out of harm's way as much as possible. You should expect a little min-maxing, but when you see every one of your players following the same course, you might want to suggest building a better balanced party. All right. Oh, okay. I thought assigned ability scores was going to be a different. Okay, so that's the standard. Okay. I don't see how assign. Oh, because the player's assigning the scores. Never mind. All right, I'm a little dumb. I'm sorry. All right, random ability scores. Using this method, a player rolls 2d6 plus 2 for each of his hero's ability scores. Of course, random generation is, well, random. It's possible that a hero or villain rolled up this way could have ability scores set at 5 or 6, or he could get a battery of ability scores at 11 or higher. Fortunately, you have a tool available for dealing with heroes who possess scores that are too low for your campaign. A hero without any ability scores of 11 or higher can raise one score of his choice to 11. Obviously, it's best for the hero to raise the lowest of his or her ability scores. If none of the scores that are left are 9 or better, the player can bump another score of his choice, probably the second worst, to 9. This guarantees that the hero qualifies for a profession and that the player has a viable character for the game. You can also use this rule to, quote, power up villains or other supporting cast members. What about heroes that roll an astonishing set of ability scores? You can tone down a character to a level appropriate for your campaign. Simply have your players prune their character's ability scores until they fall under the reasonable limits that you desire. For example, most players will understand if you limit their hero to a single score of 14, 2 scores of 13, and 3 scores of 12. You can decide if players can place randomly generated ability scores in any order, or if they must assign the scores in the order they're rolled. The advantage to arranging the scores to the player's taste is that the player can tailor his hero's abilities to fit a specific profession. On the other hand, requiring a player to arrange the scores in the order he rolls them can help a player decide what kind of character to play when he doesn't know what he wants to create. So basically, it's 3d6 down the line or 3d6 and assign them where you want them, which that's fine. Actually, real quick, I did want to come back up and check out this sidebar. Who needs a personality? AKA, why is personality the dump stat? Personality is an ability often shorted by players building combat-oriented or technically oriented heroes. This isn't entirely unreasonable. The tough-talking soldier who constantly picks a fight, or the engineer who's more comfortable with machines than with people are both acceptable heroes. You may tire of seeing Personality 4 and Personality 5 heroes stomping around in your campaign. Here are a couple things you can do to bring respect back to personality. Personality-based scenes and adventures. Imagine how the players will react when you create an adventure that requires the heroes to use interaction, deception, or leadership in order to succeed. You can't do this all the time, but every now and then it's perfectly acceptable to confound the heroes because they didn't have the skills they needed. Random character generation. Instead of allowing the players to build characters as described in Chapter 2 of the Player's Handbook, use dice rolls to generate ability scores. Some of your combat specs may actually end up with average or superior personality scores. Remember abusive heroes. Some players think that a big gun is a substitute for wit and charm. If you put yourself in the shoes of your supporting characters, you'll see that this shouldn't be true. When a hero threatens a supporting character with physical violence, he's got a good chance of getting his way, for the moment. But the victim will certainly harbor bad feelings, and he might try for retribution in the future. The threatened person may call the authorities or contact a powerful crime lord asking for protection. Additionally, he may slap a lawsuit on the hero or file charges. He may even round up a lynch mob and set off to bring the hero to justice. In short, even heroes have to live with the consequences of their actions. All right, I really like that they added that. Just because of the fact that, with any of these stat-based games, something's going to get left behind, as far as what your ability levels are going to be. But if you've got that absolute crap number, make your players deal with it. I have zero issues with that recommendation. It's like, you are a gruff, ugly son of a biscuit. People are not going to react kindly to you. So I think that's fine. And I like that they actually mentioned it. Bring it up, tell people, make them suffer. All right. Alternate method 1. You may have a player in your group who knows that he wants to run a combat specialist or a free agent. Using the method detailed on table G2, random abilities by profession, which I think is, that's this one right here. So, a hero automatically begins with the scores necessary to qualify for a specific profession. This method is also useful for building supporting characters quickly. If you don't want to spend too much time thinking about which combination of ability scores will provide you with the perfect villain or supporting cast member, try rolling the character's ability scores with this system. Species minimums and maximums still apply. Optional method 2. Other players may want to create a hero belonging to a specific species. The dice generation system shown on table G3 guarantees a workable character of the appropriate species. It also ensures that the alien qualifies for at least one profession. You can use this system to generate random characters of the appropriate species. This system strongly steers aliens towards their respective archetypes, wherein almost always come out as combat specs, Sashayans as free agents, Mechalus and Tassa as tech ops, and Frawl as diplomats. Alternate method 3. You may find that a 2d6 plus 2 roll is too unpredictable for your taste, but you don't like the way that players skimp on some ability scores when assigning their points. In this alternative, heroes begin with base scores of 5 and all 6 ability scores. The player then rolls 7 6-sided dice. The player adds the result of each die to any ability score he wishes. Players can't split a die result. They must add one whole die roll to one score, though they can add multiple die rolls to a single score. Species minimums and maximums apply. This system allows a player to steer a character towards specific strengths and weaknesses without assigning exact numbers. You may find this system useful as it enables you to create villains and supporting cast members who possess defined strengths and weaknesses. So this one I actually really like. I was able to skim through a little bit of the Game Master's Guide. I actually do like this one. It keeps the scores from being too low, but it does add in some randomness as opposed to just the regular point buy. Keeping it from being where all the players have, essentially all the same stats. So I really like this particular method. All right. What did I miss? I missed something. Oh, that's part of the example. Okay. All right. Other building methods. While the building method you chose for generating ability scores is one way to customize your campaign, heroes aren't defined by ability scores alone. The hero's choice of profession and the skills he chooses are every bit as important. Here's another way to build a character. Have the players pick the skills they think the hero needs before assigning a single ability score. After the players create a package of 4 or 5 broad skills that define... one second. Define their hero's talents, you can determine which professions and ability scores match these skills. Assigning ability scores is a simple process once the player knows what his hero should be good at. For example, let's say one of your players wants modern ranged weapons, manipulation, acrobatics, deception, and stealth. He's thinking of a super spy of some kind. Since 4 out of his 5 broad skills rely on dexterity, he'll want a good dexterity score. Several of his skills are tied to the free agent profession. This player should consider creating a free agent character and aiming for the highest dexterity possible. Game masters interested in adding new dimensions to their players' heroes or their supporting cast members should see FX in Chapter 16. The rules there allow more unusual and more powerful heroes to enter your campaign. All right. Designing new species. Excuse me 1 second. All right. Just a few pages to go. All right. This is actually one thing that I do like, is that they actually are giving you some rules on creating new aliens. I'm still kind of shocked that they only did 5 alien races in the player's handbook, but here we are. So, science fiction contains myriads of extraterrestrial creatures. Some pass for human, moving unseen through the circles of our own society. Others are predatory creatures, far stronger, smarter, or faster than the most heroic human protagonists. A great number seem to be little more than humans in funny suits. Creatures whose alien appearance masks an allegorical illustration of a particular human fault or virtue. Players can create alien heroes. The 5 alien species presented in the player's handbook are not the only extraterrestrial species open to players. They're simply examples of alien races appropriate to a general science fiction setting. If you don't think these aliens fit into the type of game you want to run, you can declare one or all of them off limits to your players. Similarly, you can develop entirely new species appropriate to the needs of your campaign, or you can leave the design of alien heroes to your players' imaginations. What's an alien? Each alien species possesses several abilities and limitations that differentiate it from humanity. The first of these differences appears in the ability scores of each species. Due to differences in physiology and anatomy, some alien characters can exceed human ability maximums. For example, Weren characters can reach a strength of 16, while Thrall heroes can possess intelligence scores of 15. Both of these scores exceed the human maximum of 14. Alien characters may suffer limitations in other ability maximums to compensate for this advantage. For example, Weren are large and bulky and can't have dexterity scores higher than 12. Since aliens have the same number of points to distribute as humans do, they must make sacrifices to reach extremely high scores in their natural abilities. Alien characters exhibit superhuman ability in one or two areas, while humans have decent scores in all abilities. If you want to play a muscle bound, gun toting scientist, you should create a human tech op with lots of combat skills. If you want to create the best scientist possible, nothing beats a Frawl or Mechalus hero. In addition to their higher ability score maximums, most alien characters receive some significant advantages or benefits that human characters can't get. Frawl begin with psionic powers. Waren can inflict mortal damage in unarmed combat. Tassar are naturally armored. To compensate for these innate advantages, aliens have fewer skill points with which to select broad and specialty skills than humans of comparable intelligence. This reinforces the human advantage. Humans are generalists who tend to pick up lots of skills. Finally, each species possesses its own innate skills. For instance, Sashayans begin play with the acrobatics broad skill. You can allow players to change these free broad skills or trade them in for other broad skills, but ask the player to provide a good explanation for why his hero doesn't fit the mold of his species. Put simply, why isn't this hero representative of his or her? They said the same thing twice. All right. Concept. The creation of new alien heroes provides players with a greater variety of choices from which to build their own characters. New species also add layers of detail to your campaign and offer the potential for new storylines. Though not a complex undertaking, species generation requires imagination and a good deal of common sense. When designing a new hero species, it's best to begin with a general concept before moving to the alien's ability scores, powers, and other game particulars. From time to time, a player might approach you about trying out a brand new species. There's no reason you can't allow any kind of alien you like into your campaign. However, you should keep an eye on game balance and character power when introducing a new hero species. If every player in your game decides that he wants to try creating a hero of the new species, then that alien might possess too many advantages and too few weaknesses. Even the most altruistic player has a hard time passing up a clear game advantage for the sake of role-playing alone. Work with the player using the guidelines for alien creation detailed below. Number 2, form and physiology. This category concerns itself with the anatomical makeup of a species. What does the alien look like? Is it humanoid, bipedal, quadrupedal? Does it have arms, tentacles, claws, or some other appendages? What is its diet? Can it talk, or does it have a nonverbal method of communication? These are important questions to answer as you create the species. Anything that relates to the alien's anatomical nature falls in this category. Answering these questions may seem daunting at first, but remember, you don't need to have a xenobiologist's understanding of the alien's anatomical functions. Jot down some quick notes on those characteristics that define the new species. These general ideas will have an impact on later aspects of its design, such as the alien's ability scores, advantages, disadvantages, and motivations. Form and physiology may also affect other categories such as history, culture, and psychology later during the alien's design. For example, a species with telepathic communication might not develop a culture based around the written word. Or sign language, because they're telepaths. Why would they use sign language? If you know, you know. All right, history. This category deals with the past events and important experiences that helped shape an alien's character. The alien's inter- and intraspecies relationships and its stellar location or planet of origin. Past events and historical experiences offer intriguing possibilities for an alien's development. Revolutions, natural disasters, invasions, scientific breakthroughs, alien contact, and religious wars are just a few of the possible experiences that could influence the formation of a new species. For example, a species that suffers cruelly at the hands of invaders might develop into an aggressive, warlike people, or they might evidence a large amount of cowardice and apathy in the face of aggressive behavior. Another important aspect of a species' history is its relationship to others of its kind, as well as its relationship to other aliens. A state of constant civil war might cause a species to develop a high degree of distrust, fear, or antipathy for other members of its species. On the other hand, a species that remains decidedly neutral throughout a system-wide war may gain the trust of all involved planets, thus paving the way for a species whose members are known for diplomacy, tact, and skills at mediation. Details about a species' planet of origin, or lack thereof, can provide you with a definite blueprint for your alien. Planet known for its hostile environment and deadly flora and fauna may engender a species whose strength and swiftness is only surpassed by its ability to adapt to harsh conditions. Likewise, beings raised on a paradise planet might eschew violence and aggression in favor of more altruistic endeavors. Don't worry about creating the entire history of an alien civilization. A few simple ideas will give you enough background to create the type of alien you envision. Other historical events and campaign storylines may form later as your heroes develop and interact with supporting cast members of the new species. Munda says, this is fun. Can I make a human cyborg with no legs and has a tank-like scooter to get around? You can. The funny thing is, Munda, that's actually like that would actually just be straight out of the player's handbook. I mean, I have to look at, like the tank scooter legs. But the player's handbook does include rules for cybernetics. Technically, they are alternate rules. But they are still there. This particular thing is because it's a science fiction game and the player's handbook only gives you 5 aliens. Well, I actually like the fact that they're giving you rules for how to create aliens. Like I actually really like this section 3, the history, because it does impact a lot. It's not just like you can't just make a new race and call it good. If you're making a new race, there has to be a reason for it. There's some sort of history, there's some sort of background that's going to be impacting the way that a player would run that character. So I love that they're telling you, make sure you don't have to develop it all. You don't have to create the last 8,000 years of history for your new species, but put something down, figure it out. All right. Number 4, culture. Culture includes a species' social institutions, governmental structures, and artistic movements, as well as its customs, mores, religious beliefs, and laws. What type of class structure exists within this species society? What type of governmental system does it use? Do members of this species have any important or interesting taboos? What about artistic expression? These are just some of the useful questions that can assist you during this section of the design process. A species' culture heavily influences and is influenced by its history. In addition, cultural preferences may steer heroes of this new species into certain professions or forbid heroes to undertake certain careers. For example, members of a species with highly developed religious beliefs in pacifism might never choose the combat spec profession. All right. They then break down one of the new races. We're not going to read all of that because we are, somewhat pressed for time. She's armed and it's dangerous. Whatever that is. I still really like the art in this book. Or both of these books. The Player's Handbook and the Game Master's Guide. They got fantastic artists. All right, psychology. Psychology deals with the worldview and ultimate mindset of a species. Psychology influences how the species perceives the world around it and how it processes that perception. Psychological tendencies can influence and be influenced by the development of a species' culture and history. In addition, an alien's form, how it interacts with the surrounding universe, provides a strong basis for its psychological outlook. An alien's worldview can affect its motivations, moral attributes, and less obviously its advantages and disadvantages. Mundo wants to know, is the psych like Warhammer where you need to take a gore test? No, it is not. Psychic abilities are actually more like skills. I know you weren't here for the Player's Handbook, but the way that skills work is there's broad skills and then there's specialties or specializations. So like you'd have athletics and then athletics swimming, kind of a thing. And if you don't have a skill for it, then it's untrained. So once you take a skill, essentially its target number equals, I want to say the target number equals like the ability score related to it. So if it's a strength skill, then you're going to use your strength score as your target number. So when you're rolling dice, you're going to roll a d20 plus situation die. The situation die is anywhere from a d20 or a d4, 6, 8, 12, or 20, and is going to be either added to or subtracted from the d20 roll. And the catch is you're trying to roll low. If you roll under the target number, it's an ordinary success. If you roll under half of the target number, it's a good success. And if you roll under 1/4, it's an amazing success. So the thing is that your any psychic skills are based on your willpower, and then you activate them just like skills. There are the psychic points. I forget exactly what they're called. I'd have to go back and look at the book. But there is essentially just like a mana currency in order to use them. But yeah, the warp is not going to come in and infest your mind and turn you to chaos. That's not a thing in this. It could be, in an alternate campaign setting, but not in this one. All right. Number 6, playability. After you've fleshed out some general ideas about the new species, you should take a close look at its playability. How interesting or possible is it for a player to run a hero of this species? An alien made up entirely of a viscous liquid held together by mental powers might seem like an intriguing possibility. However, if this alien can't interact with its environment or communicate in any way with other heroes or supporting cast members, players will probably experience frustration and boredom. After all, playing a barely animate pile of goo is only fun for so long. There's only one hard and fast rule governing the playability of new aliens. They must possess some degree of intelligence. Unintelligent aliens can't function as heroes. Despite its form or physiology, a new hero species must have some characteristics that make it compatible with humanity. It must possess the ability to move independently and the fortitude to survive in environments that humanity can tolerate. Its body must include limbs, tentacles, or other manipulative organs that can take the place of hands that humans are accustomed to. It shouldn't possess any innate powers that make it superior to any conceivable human character. Shouldn't possess any innate powers. I mean, just having powers is going to, quote unquote, make it superior. I think it just means like, a reason why you would take it, like always take it over human. Like maybe you're going to take it over human because you want to do something different, but it shouldn't override the desire the desire to take a human. Does that make sense? I think that's what they're trying to say, and at least that's how I'm going to interpret it. All right. Ability score requirements. When a player creates a character belonging to a new species, the first thing to do is generate the alien's ability scores. What minimums or maximums should you set? Keep in mind that the normal range of ability scores for human heroes falls between 4 and 14, and use the following guidelines. Aliens with abilities inferior to humans might have minimums as low as 2. On the other hand, aliens significantly superior to humans in a particular ability may have maximums as high as 16. In addition, species in which the best members will never match the best humans may have an ability maximum set at 10 or 12. Similarly, if the least member of the new species possesses greater scores than the least humans, the alien's minimum scores might be 6 or 8. For example, Thrall are intellectual creatures that can't match the physical capabilities of well-trained humans. Here are the ability score minimums and maximums for a Thrall hero. Strength 4 to 11. The weakest Frawl heroes aren't any weaker than the weakest humans, but Frawl can't match the muscular and physical development of a human in good shape. Dexterity 411. Again, the least agile Frawl aren't any worse than the least agile humans, but they can't match the grace or reaction speed of many human characters. Constitution 410. The same is true for stamina, resistance to damage, and overall health. Even the toughest Frawl only makes it slightly above the human average. Intelligence 915. There's no such thing as an inferior mind among the Frawl. Some Frawl can even exceed human capabilities, while even the dimmest Frawl matches the human average. Will 916. Intuition, resolve, and understanding are the defining characteristics of the Frawl race. The weakest willed Frawl equals the average human, and many Frawl possess significantly stronger wills than human. Personality 415. The most personable and charismatic Frawl are slightly better than humans. Otherwise, the Frawl have a normal variation that parallels the human range of personality. Any new alien heroes that you or your players create should stand on equal footing with the other characters in the campaign. Give the new alien species a total of number of points to distribute among their ability scores equal to those given to other heroes. In the typical campaign, this total is 60 points. Okay. All right. Advantages. While the special advantages possessed by an alien race are the most interesting part of designing a new species, they're also the trickiest to design. Godlike innate gifts that allow a hero to emerge victorious easily spoil the excitement of the game. Game masters must guard against designing overpowered special abilities or allowing such abilities into their campaign. Here are some examples of special advantages appropriate to an alien hero. Action check bonus, all-around vision, armor, camouflage. Environmental capability, tolerates class 2 or class 3 environments without aid. Flight, mental powers, natural resistance to temperature extremes, radiation, particular energy forms, poison, or disease. Natural weaponry, poison. Regeneration, quickly recovers from wounds or mortal damage without surgery or treatment. Increased resistance modifier to 1 ability score. Skill bonus, sprinting or pouncing, swimming or water breathing, toughness, and unusual sense. Another good source for special advantages is your favorite science fiction or fantasy novel, or a published compendium of alien species. This I do think is good, and I totally agree with the idea that you need to balance it, like giving 1 or 2 advantages, but then also making sure that you give them, so like it says weaknesses usually is going to be fine. So weaknesses balance powerful advantages by assigning unusual weaknesses, such as low ability scores. Suffers increased damage from low impact, high impact, or energy attacks. Yeah, so exactly. You're vulnerable to lasers. Reduced senses, action check penalty, skill penalty, automatic flaw. Can't use certain types of equipment due to body form, cultural taboo, or any other reason you can imagine. All right. So essentially that's creating that. Wow, that was it for creating aliens. All right. I actually think they're pretty, the rules are pretty simple for creating aliens. I think I know they did a couple of supplement books that cover alien species. I do not own any of those, so I cannot tell you how they work out as far as for new playable races. But my guess is they essentially went off of these rules to create them. So, seems pretty solid to me. All right, professions and careers. A hero's profession serves one major purpose: definition. Choosing a particular profession brings a hero into focus and identifies his or her role in the campaign. At the same time, the choice of a profession doesn't necessarily restrict a hero to certain capabilities or powers. Anyone can become an outstanding warrior or brilliant scientist, but heroes who aren't combat specs or tech ops will find that it's not as easy. By defining a hero's natural talents, a profession determines what kinds of adventures, challenges, and encounters best suit the heroes in your game. If a hero's profession is a broad definition of what he does, his career represents a more specific definition of who he is. The career that a hero selects speaks volumes about his background, his methods and motives, his wealth and equipment, and his approach to an adventure. There are few rules concerning careers. A hero designed without reference to any career is every bit as capable as the hero built on a career blueprint. However, a career does help a player to envision his hero more clearly and understand how that hero will approach an adventure. Heroes in society. Heroes are uncommon, but they're not unique. Many of the important allies, employees, villains, and supporting characters that heroes interact with possess a profession and experience level. Since player run heroes are at the center of action in your campaign, above average supporting cast members naturally gravitate towards situations in which they help or hinder the heroes. People with unusual ability, talent, or drive naturally rise to the upper levels or the critical positions of their vocation. In a 50-person police department, 4 or 5 of the highest ranking officers and administrators are diplomats. Another 2 or 3 individuals might be tech ops, forensic specialists, and criminologists. The department's 4 or 5 best fighters might be combat specs, grouped into a tactical unit. Finally, 2 or 3 of the senior detectives and investigators would work as free agents. The majority of the department's personnel are non-professionals with skills in law, security, investigation, interaction, and other areas. Heroes aren't always the people in charge, even if they are more competent than their superiors. In fact, player heroes shouldn't expect people to defer to them just because they've got a pistol 7 skill and the ruthlessness to use it. Positional authority counts for a lot, and from time to time, you might have to remind the players that their heroes must abide by the rules, both written and unwritten, of human society. A tough police detective who ignores the politically appointed commissioner quickly finds himself suspended or out of a job, even though the detective is a level 5 free agent, while the commissioner is a bumbling idiot without any skills. Here are some guidelines for the roles that heroes play in society. Combat specs. While a special forces unit such as the Green Berets or the Navy SEALs might contain all combat specs, most armed forces include only a handful of these heroes. Naturally, combat specs appear more often in societies where warfare, unrest, or lawlessness ensure that violence is never too far away. Pacifistic or complacent societies produce few individuals who study these skills. Combat specs may serve in the military, in police forces, or as thugs or enforcers in criminal organizations. Generally, combat specs don't lead troops. Senior officers are usually diplomats who choose combat spec as their secondary profession. Okay, interesting. All right, free agents. In many societies, the free agent is not in great demand. The skills a free agent normally acquires are often concealed from the public at large. Most free agents live on the edge of the law. Most of them thrive on anonymity and consciously cultivate an ability to fade into the background. More than any other hero type, free agents prefer to operate alone or as members of small groups. They don't function well in a large, organized force. Even though a government or megacorporation may employ free agents, these heroes work best when given the freedom to use their wits, instinct, and special talents as they see fit. Tech ops. This profession embraces 2 related character types: the tech user, such as a pilot or a hacker, and the tech maker, an engineer or a theoretical scientist. People who work with technology are common in modern or advanced societies. With time, patience, and exceptional performance, a tech op can rise to the highest technical or administrative level of his field. A skilled hacker may become a vice president of computer operations, while a sharp scientist could eventually become a department head or an outpost administrator. Diplomats. Businessmen, military officers, corporate executives, explorers, administrators, ambassadors, entertainers, journalists. All of these prominent careers fall into the diplomatic sphere. Diplomats have an inherent advantage in most social situations. A trader hero finds that local businessmen want to deal with him. The special skills and talents of entertainers are always in demand. Military officers and government administrators have the potential to wield significant power. It's conceivable for an intelligent combat spec to rise to command of a ship or a division of ground troops. but a theater commander or service chief will almost always be a diplomat with a military specialty. Diplomats determine what needs um, doing, formulate a plan of action, and oversee its execution. They manage the human resources, tech ops, free agents, combat specs, or other diplomats necessary to complete the task. Diplomats are natural leaders and organizers. A diplomat is at his best when surrounded by other talented people who understand the situation. So basically, they're saying don't think of it as like a diplomat or like an ambassador type character. It's anybody who's managing something. So, all right, I like that. Could have picked a better word maybe, but I think it works. All right. Mindwalkers. Your campaign may or may not feature these mental specialists. Refer to Chapter 16, Optional Rules for help in making the decision whether to include psionics. Using careers. The sample careers presented in Chapter 6 in the Player's Handbook include a variety of selections to cover the most famous, popular, or exciting types of characters found in science fiction. However, the list isn't exhaustive, nor are they hard and fast rules. You may find that a particular hero or hero type isn't found in the selection of careers available to your player's heroes, and you may desire to create careers specific to your campaign. Feel free to alter existing sample characters or design new ones. Sample careers don't offer advantages in hero creation. A player who starts from scratch can easily build a very capable hero without using any of the samples. The best role for sample careers in your campaign is a purely descriptive one. They provide a beginning, listing general motivations and skills, as well as overall function in your campaign. So, yes, they have careers, but the game is not really a class-based game. So, when they show the careers, it's always, built using the existing rules anyways, so it's fine. All right, skill selection. Skills are the heart of the game. The most important differences between one hero and another lie in their selection of skills. This is the longest and most involved part of creating a hero. You should look over a player's hero when he or she finishes selecting skills and make yourself available to answer questions and offer guidance. Depending on the setting of your game, heroes may not have all the skills listed in the player's handbook open to them. There's no point in selecting the armor operation powered armor skill in a modern techno thriller or espionage campaign. None of the armor types available requires this skill. Likewise, the vehicle operation water vehicle specialty skill is out of place in a campaign set on a desert planet. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Have you heard of shipwreck? Just saying. All right, profession bias. One of the rewards for choosing a profession is the ability to select skills of the profession's group at reduced cost. When a character selects an skill inside his profession, the base cost is 1 point lower. While players are free to pay the full cost and buy any skill, they'll end up with more skills and higher ranks in specialty skills if they stay within their hero's professional strong points. For example, many of the combat-oriented skills fall into the combat spec skill group, so they're less expensive for a combat spec than they are for any other character. The combat spec can improve his weapon skills more quickly than a free agent, diplomat, or tech op can. Having to pay 1 point more than another profession isn't really a deterrent to a determined player. You should encourage players to build any type of hero they wish, as long as these heroes fit into your particular campaign setting and their players are honest in observing the limitations of intelligence, profession, and level when purchasing skills. Some of the best characters include a smattering of skills that aren't tied directly to their standard role in the game. For example, a space marine with some deception skills makes a great barracks con artist. Uh-oh. They said space marine. Gonna get sued. Generalizing skills. If you want to make a skill more accessible in your campaign, feel free to change its availability. For example, a campaign centered on starfighters or heavy armor combat might discourage players from creating diplomats or free agent characters, but if you change vehicle operation space vehicle and armor operation powered armor to open skills, any hero can purchase them at the base cost. Which, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, like if you want to do, say, Starship Troopers, okay, well, that's power armor, and you need officers. which they've already said are diplomats, which diplomats wouldn't necessarily have access to armor operation powered armor. So, yeah, you can free that up and say, okay, yeah, for your particular class, this is an open skill. Maybe it's not going to be, with the advantage where you're going to get to spend less points, but again, better than being penalized. All right, style skills. A few skills are open-ended, allowing players to customize their characters to suit a particular style or image. A couple examples are the knowledge and acrobat skills. If a player wants his character to be proficient in skateboarding, he's welcome to invent a new specialty skill under the acrobatics called skateboarding. Style skills, such as this one, can provide opportunities for role-playing and make a character truly memorable. I totally agree with that, especially with skill-based games. Like, they're generally giving you the broad skills, some of the specialty skills, but a lot of times it's just like, talk to your game master. It's like, hey, I want to do this thing. Cool. That sounds like a specialty of this broad skill. Let's add it. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Perks and flaws aren't intended to be game-breaking faults or strengths. Rather, they function as colorful characteristics that finish a hero in just the right way. Perks and flaws don't have to balance precisely. If a hero has skill points left over after skill selection, he can pick up a perk without having to take a flaw to get extra points. Similarly, a hero might overbuy on his skills and compensate with a flaw or two. As long as the points add up and the hero doesn't harm your campaign, it's okay. With one thing with that, I would say that, like after a certain number of perks requiring a flaw or two would be required, but again, that's me, not in the rules. All right, flaws that aren't flaws. Some flaws clearly have more than an immediate game impact than others. A powerful enemy may not bother a hero for months at a time, but the fragile flaw could crop up in any combat scene. Make sure that you record any flaws players select for their characters and make use of them. If a hero's powerful enemy never makes an appearance, then the character's flaw, a supposed disadvantage, merely represents free skill points that work to the hero's advantage. Finding just the right use for a flaw in an adventure can heighten the dramatic tension just as much as throwing surprise attacks or deadly traps at the heroes. So yeah, like what are they? It wasn't powerful enemy. So powerful enemy, like in that case, like like Iceman versus Maverick in Top Gun. They're in the same place. They're seeing each other all the time. So, that's going to be something that affects and impacts the hero. As opposed to like, big bad evil guy that never shows up in the campaign because he's not needed. All right. Role-playing attributes. Once a player builds the physical skeleton of his hero, it's time for him to think of that character's personality. Motivation, moral attitude, and character traits are powerful tools for developing well-rounded characters. They give you a useful handle on what's important to the heroes in your campaign and help you design adventures that they will want to undertake and complete. More information on role-playing attributes can be found in Chapter 7. And equipment. The last step in preparing a character is equipping him with weapons, armor, and nifty technological devices. There are 4 good ways to handle the initial allocation of equipment when a hero is created. First, you can use the guidelines presented in Chapter 6 in the player's handbook to provide heroes with signature gear. Second, you can personally select the weapons, armor, and gear you think the hero should carry. Third, you can allow the player to peruse the equipment list in the player's handbook and choose the items he thinks his hero should have. Review his choices and see if he went over the top or sold himself short. Finally, you can simply allow the hero to begin with starting funds and purchase anything he can afford. This places a hard ceiling on the number of neat gadgets and high-powered weapons with which a hero can begin play. If you decide to assign equipment, remember that heroes begin with some pocket cash. That's not much, but it allows a hero to pay for a few meals, lodging, or small equipment purchases until he earns money from somewhere else. All right. Progress level. Before you start allocating equipment to the heroes, you must decide what progress level your campaign is set at. See Chapter 13 Campaign Design and Chapter 14 Campaign Architecture for guidelines. Typically, a modern game is PL5, a near future game is PL6, and a far future game is PL7 or 8. However, some areas in any setting may be at lower progress level than other areas. For example, there may be areas that rely on PL6 technology in a PL7 setting. You could even rule that a hero from a barbaric or rustic world must begin play with arms and equipment of progress level 3 or lower, although the hero could quickly upgrade his technology by shopping in an advanced location. Um, which makes me like, sorry, it made me think because of spending yesterday watching Thundercats all afternoon. Um, Dealing with a situation where you've got a planet and multiple tech levels. Um, yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of things that you can use to play into that. Um, yeah. Ooh, there could be some fun there. All right. Weapon and armor availability. Grenades are cheap and useful in a fight, but there's no way each hero in the party should be toting a half dozen incendiary grenades everywhere they go. The availability ratings for weapons and top of the line armor in the equipment tables are there to preserve a sense of realism. Many types of weapons and armor are illegal in civilized locales. It's reasonable for heroes to wear sidearms in rough and tumble regions, but rifles, heavy weapons, and explosives aren't acceptable in many places. When the heroes step off their ship into a starport, city, or space station, they should leave their plasma guns and mass rifles behind. That's something that I'd never really thought of before. Like in a fantasy game, nobody cares. You know, you're carrying your bow, you're carrying your sword, you know, just like wherever you go, yep, you've got it. It's fine. But modern society and theoretically future society isn't going to work that way. Maybe you'll have a small sidearm, but you're not going to have that big heavy armor. You know, if you start doing that, people are going to ask questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? You're going to be attracting a lot of attention. You know, Malachi based his character on Rambo. You should be carrying more grenades. You know, that's a theory, but we all know what happened in Rambo 1. Just saying. So, you know, you're going to pull, you know, attention that you don't necessarily want. But, you know, if that's what the players are aiming for, let them do it. All right. Vehicles and signature items. No matter how much money a new hero begins play with, there are a few things he just can't afford. Even a filthy rich character can't afford most starships. You may decide to let a hero start with a high priced piece of gear like this, despite the fact that the hero can't even think of buying it out of his own funds. The best reason for such generosity is story related. If you have an easier time creating adventures for a group of heroes with their own ship, you can arbitrarily decree that um, the most suitable character has a ship at his disposal. Maybe the hero scraped together the money for a down payment but still has to pay it off. Of course, this opens the question of what bank, financial institution, or underworld syndicate holds the loan. Let your generosity to a hero expand your own campaign. It doesn't even have to just be, like there's a giant loan. It could be like the Millennium Falcon. There's problems. It works great most of the time, but there's a lot of times that it doesn't work great. It breaks down, the hyperdrive goes out, maybe it's got a temperamental navigation system. So he was able to buy it, but it's because there's some flaws. So, play that stuff up too. All right. What every hero owns. Even if a hero buys nothing else, it's assumed that he begins play with 2 or 3 changes of street clothes, shoes, a wallet, a cheap wristwatch, basic jewelry, a toiletry kit, and maybe a suitcase, bag, or trunk to carry all of it in. Beyond this, a hero is free to purchase anything that's available and within his means. Advanced heroes. Many game masters and players prefer to begin a campaign with tough, experienced heroes. Sometimes this is necessary to ensure that the heroes have a decent chance of survival and a fair assortment of powers and abilities at their command. Usually, even beginning heroes possess a reasonable battery of skills. If you need to create an advanced character, here's how you can do it. Have the players build their characters normally, but when they're ready to assign skills to their heroes, the extra experience gives the new hero more skill points to work with than a beginning hero normally receives. Heroes buying skills at a rank higher than 1 can refer to table G5. If the skill is in the character's profession group, subtract 1 skill point per rank purchased. For example, you're creating an expert free agent. If you decide he should have rank 6 in the pistol specialty, it costs him 6 times the pistol's cost, plus 15 skill points, for a total of 39 points. The combat spec character purchasing the same skill would pay 33 skill points. All right. Oh, that's basically it. Last words. Remember, players are never your adversaries, nor are they your tools or puppets. Keeping watch over your players' heroic characteristics as they grow and change is one of your most important tasks in any role-playing game. You should take pleasure in seeing your heroes' accomplishments as your campaign grows. The heroes give dialogue and expression to the stories you create. All right. We made it in the time frame I was hoping for. So that's awesome. So that was actually a lot of really, really good information. A lot of it does seem aimed at players. I would even still say that players should definitely read that section. Just because of the fact that it gives players a lot of things to think about. I realize the goal of the chapter, they're trying to get the game master, to think about how he's interacting with players. And so I don't think it was wrong to include it in the game master's book. But I do think it's really good information that a player should read through as well, because it is helping to clarify and understand, what are a player's motivations? What are they trying to do? So, yeah, that was actually really good. I enjoyed that. I hope you all found it interesting. I hope you all get something out of it for the next time that you're running games. But for now, I am going to call it here. I will be back tomorrow. Should start about 8:30 my time. I think that's 10:30 on the East Coast. Basically started late today because of issues with grandson and sleep and internet and all sorts of problems this morning. But I did still want to get on here and do this. Tonight, Kim and I are going to start looking at the Batman Gotham City Chronicles role-playing game from Monolith. That should be at 5 p.m. my time, so 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you are interested, absolutely come back for that. Of course, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all those fun YouTube things. I absolutely appreciate it. So with that said, I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching, and we will talk to you next time, everyone.